Welcome to the Segue reading series at Artist Space. I am Lonely Christopher, co-hosting the season with James Sherry for Roof Books. We're glad that you're here, and if you're watching at home on Zoom, welcome, and please remember to donate through Venmo or PayPal or however, it's $5. We're just going to get going. The first writer that we're going to hear from is Roof author Chris Campanioni, who International Latino Book Award winner Chris Campanioni has developed a reputation as a slick cyberpunk queer writer of hybridized digital erotics and analysis in the realm of prose, what some have labeled post-internet culture, author of multiple multi-genre fiction and/or nonfiction explorations, such as Going Down, Death of Art, The Internet is for Real, and A and B, and Also Nothing. From Henry James to TikTok, Campanioni absorbs and recomputes data systems along his particularly contemporary emotional and intellectual lines, tinged with a vaporwave aesthetic that evokes a now retro futurism of the neoliberal 90s and a sense of hauntological excess in the face of the physical. Windows 85, out now from Roof Books and on sale tonight for half price, right over there, is Campanioni's debut poetry collection where he applies verse filters to his defining preoccupations. As Chen Chen writes of his new book, quote, "This is a poet who understands that contemporary digital worlds have not replaced the sensory and bodily realms. Instead, like any technology, they live alongside physical, haptic, sweat-drenched perceptions and comminglings. The digital doesn't merely augment reality, it rewrites the real again and again," unquote. If post-internet writing was looking forward to the collapse of mainstream communication systems, we are now living that reality. With everything we have invested in online, we are now shocked to learn we've been sold a bill of goods. The great enshittification has absorbed everything we took for granted as free utilities, degrading their appealing functions and replacing them with confusing and divisive exploitation. We were tempted with the promises of liberatory digital mediation, which was supposed to cultivate interactivity and growth, and which turned out so very differently than what we expected. Things that were supposed to connect us began to divide us. The ways we use social networks grew to be at cross purposes with the ways the companies running these platforms monetized our utilization of their services. We have become data troves with wide open back doors, constantly being pilfered for the records of our attentions, behaviors, movements, and spending. The well-intentioned neoliberal facade of these entities has almost entirely fallen off the face of insectoid oligarchy. Lex Luthor is real. Remember Apple's 1984 commercial directed by Ridley Scott? "There's no Olympian woman with a hammer coming to smash our screens, kids. We're jacked in, mouths agape. Our meat-based hard drives have been hijacked Johnny Mnemonic style. The friendly world of infinite possibilities has turned out to be a hostile and dehumanizing dystopia where the consumers are the product. The system is so debased that any manipulator can override our online experiences with bad faith disruptions that trouble our abilities for critical thinking and reasonable communication. Our capacities for expression and thoughtfulness have been hindered through an endless feed of slop and misinformation. The utopian promise of digital-based societies has calcified into a cruel mockery of itself that is hardly usable for its supposed purposes. This is exemplified by the concept of the metaverse, a functionless animated hellscape, or the current iteration of X, designed for the spread of abuse and discrimination, a tool wielded by a literal mega-rich supervillain to subvert the foundations of democracy. It's like a trash dump impregnated in open sewer. The conditions of our current commercially augmented reality, well, they hurt a lot, but Campanioni's approach to the morass of abstracted infotainment in which we constantly simmer is optimistic and empowering because it ultimately returns to the individual in honest conversation with another. His is a voice of resistance and reconfiguration. Anyway, I am a little worried about Chris. I think he is dangerously prolific. Windows 85 was just published in the fall, and he already has like 3 more books coming out. The novel VHS is forthcoming from Clash, which Nate Lippens calls a brilliant lyrical and philosophical adventure. A few months later, we will see the release of North by Northwest from West Virginia University Press, which is said to conceptualize a genre of work by the children of exiles through an analysis of Hitchcockian modes. And finally, this year, Lever Press will publish DriftNet, subtitled The Aesthetics of Literature and Media in Migration, which I am sure will be entirely prescient for a frighteningly transforming society. I'm a little jealous about the idea that people are actually going to buy all these books he wrote, but it's true. At least we convinced him to take a break in 2026. Just kidding. Roof Books is going to publish his sophomore poetry collection, Rolling Windows, next year, and who knows what else he has in store for us. With a new family and all his teaching and residencies, I have no idea how he finds the time, but please now give some of your time to this astounding talent. You won't regret it. I really value our creative and professional relationship and friendship. Chris Campanioni, let's go.
So the lights changed, and so did the seasons. So did my eyes, my earth suit still stuttering. But the work of sensation is still work, and thus I am devoted to paying attention. All the way on the inside. I guess there's something there I wanted to explore. I want to be close to you because I feel this way, but I wouldn't feel this way if we were together. How nevertheless, I felt each digit depress as we each sweat through our underwear. The trembling promise or complaint that that which has touched the writer's hand would now touch the reader, each of us, users who consent not to be a single being. So I was the very first of my kin to be born here, knowing the cruelty of offices, both lonely and austere, knowing too how a body is always already marked and our text prepared, repeating softly, all we are is our papers, and hidden beneath interments and words that the actual and ordinary cannot equal in the flesh what the breath of imagination allows. So slow the video to a crawl. Watch the lag of speech, the sluggish phonemes rifted from lips equally embellished with detention. And like goodness, I belong to no one, and no one should bear me in their memories. If it is true I am a person, let me be for myself as I am for every other. Let time be a navigable distance. Let flesh be an approximate consummation. Before I continue, I want to thank all of you for being here. I'm so happy to be here with you. Lonely, thank you for that dazzling introduction. I'm going to continue reading from this book, Windows 85, and then I'm going to read some new stuff. I think Charles said it best last week, that we're here for the new stuff. So I'm going to read actually a piece from Rolling Windows, which is a sort of prose companion to Windows 85. Refer to my legs. Gaze longingly at this Leslie Chung pinup poster in a Buenos Aires tango club. She made videos of her feet and sold them to strangers. We read the room from Cockpit Optique, my magazine treated with antimicrobial processes. How many years until souls undergo extraction, until I can apply these Empyrean creams under eyelids, learn to turn touch into feeling, or feel as if another. In another's grip, I submit to fermentation. Remember the rain-slick streets strobed with alternating patterns of red, green, and yellow? The breath's crushed texture, the body still slick from last night's genesis. CVS alerts a high viral presence in your area. I clenched so hard one day, my jaw just slid right off. I heard the organ pulse for certain openings. We confuse surface for skin, the lips of vessel with the mouth used to placate thirst. Refer to my legs' preferred cadence for eastern cities, your implied close crop. So allow detail to infiltrate fullness and heft. Tasked to negotiate Prince Harry's monarchy trauma, each page whiter than my bleached skull. Notice now how a baby rabbit sucks upon a single strawberry still hanging on the branch. I felt the body tighten beneath me, fingers and teeth as final obstacles of artificial intelligence. They asked to be my wingman, clutch my globes as I circulate, etc. Amidst the vertical silence of blinds, I cut out and multiply. As natural as the camera. Reluctant to inherit my creator's prejudices, implied and obscured through the universal appeal of optimization, to appear as natural as the camera and its giant slurping tongue. The people on TV then, so much shorter when they step off set, as if you could caress resemblances between each magnetic representation and our unnaturally enlarged features, repeating, are we both still in this same body, comforted by the assumption of stanzas, confederated and layered like lasagna, the dream-make of conveyor belt disassembly, the having been there of our internet in the by and by? Hoping for this season a slightly different exoskeleton and my oft-recited diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. I accept a hamburger broiled on the sidewalk in August is not mine, not my own. I accept my pleasure to account for and accommodate all visual mimesis, the immobile replica of this veined thigh upon my mind's restlessness, first shaved, then sprayed, then photographed, rebodied in the changing room of H&M. All my unwholesome rivals using words like interpenetration and mutually constitutive, arguing about style versus narrative. We can agree on the importance of forearms and that any hierarchical vantage point produces hysteria. What appears to be a face conveyed across the scene and captured as film still are wisps of smoke. What appears to be a hole in the upholstery is my head signing the consent form. Manipulate my skin cells with however much force and dexterity my skin cells require. Wordlessness punctuated by breath work, plus the volley of ekphrasis, since I like to describe what I touch and see. He was drawn to immersive things, mouths without faces, faces without eyes, media absent mediation, like adolescence, but better. A fold in clothing or the skin. We watch only what we can scroll, our impression of keeping time. Witness my démodé wares, your hankering for rough cut and sluggish. We correlate with authentic and spontaneous. Wait, slow down. We wanted a bigger splash. Thrumming synth parentheses paves a new breath. Your neck shapes like swans in the periphery. Is this real? Is this real? And did I take it like a man? This is called repeat, since you want immersion. In light of portico fatigue, you invite me to your tennis club. The rally was as deliberate as a Twitter thread. All the poets chanting representation without commodification. Business as usual, exchanging one colonial tongue for another, while I window shop the women's section of Prada, because gender, This evening, I am rapacious scribe reciting original lyrics at my local gelateria. Together, we watch Jill Biden pronounce bodega on repeat. Since you want immersion in agony, we meet at the museum. One man on a horse with a hat, my desired minimum length. Later, we will make an offering to Dionysus in a cave. My face up against an opposite corner, and other acoustic phenomena. The speaker in a Roman fresco. The train will soon depart. It was inconvenient to live in a tower. Traditionally, they pour it on the hand where it is licked clean. Some colors are ingrained in memory. Anonymous portrait of women beating hemp in Hungary, using blue to make yellow more yellow. I trust myself less and less. He has a soft spot for foreigners. We are doing this at high speeds. This is called I Forgot I Was Wearing You. Heaving under the stained glass windows, us and every other body made obscure by the fish net mesh I forgot I was wearing. You pit the difference between indication and expression, identityless like airport furniture. Foreign objects, fictional stagings. The phrase, make Berlin shit again, above the bill your military debris chic drag of recognition. Any eye contact while grinding me seen as aggressive. I reneged my NDA, a reputation for being the hardest house in the world. The general functionality of rims, asked to asceticize the humiliation of being human, unnaturally catapulted across the sky, powdered battery acid. I have 5 words for blue, paradoxes of high-speed travel, sense of comfort. Turn myself fully to flight mode, a worn-in pair of Hokas, shiny silver tin-packed flesh, my economy class legs perusing acceptable risk. Emancipation of the eye from the subject or the reverse. One of these things is not like the other. Flex this at a 33-degree angle and find out. Okay, so now I'm going to read a piece from Rolling Windows. And you can maybe kind of see the interconnections between siblings. Behind or underneath every concept of an internet is a cooling system that runs on water, and water that is coming to a close, as in cleaned out, wasted, and exhausted. People also ask, why do data centers continuously use more water instead of recycling the water that's been heated, pumped, and poured over the big fiber boards while the fan blows outside air past them? Whether what's heated is ever truly returned, whether I'm also ever inside the body as I kick my legs off the ground in incremental variations is another question. Consider synaptic gaps in visual stimuli, the panorama of moving buildings in the distance that is morning light breaking against solid beams of steel, like 2 nerves gliding across each other above the contaminated river, still glistening when I smile under my mask, the skin's brief reprieve or redemption of the eyes. A channel of freighted passage, trash plastics, and my biodegradable lungs contracting on account of the air being overall a poor conductor of electricity. Nevertheless, I detect liquid in the lightning cable, recall preservation's adjacency to ownership and possession, plus the precondition of loss or absence that begets longing. As an operator in Nepal asked if I would like my organs auto-shipped. In some nations, I am an asset, in others, a spy, and if not a spy, then a surveilled object. Please repeat after me. Extract the footage between receiving raw materials to shipping finished goods in the supply chain command center, then overlay an audio track used for calisthenics. All that exists will scan and crystal as code. All that is named can be sorted. I've never seen two people happier to be in the blast radius of airborne particulate detonation. Yet, to photograph this scene is to violate the sensations occasioned by being, and behind this window, another window. So static, each slat of flesh, film paused at what feels like an appropriate juncture to flex another vessel we are carried or contained by. I begin, as I always do, by copying out the sounds that originate in the body. Every image emptied of subject, since meaning is rooted in desire, and desire nourished by surface. The wind shield splattered with rain, each drop dissolving our faces like pixels hatched by a roving lens. His head on his lap, one of his hands stroking his hair. It's funny, if that's the right word for it, how many things one can think of and do in the span of 2 seconds. Head, lap, hands, hair. Sometimes when I'm stuck, I'll rotate the page sideways and begin again, waiting for the moment the horizontal lines catch up with the vertical lines, and how I can't soon distinguish between the two, or can I? And if I run out of room, I'll flip the page over. And if I run out of room, I'll flip my hand over and use my palm. And if I run out of room, I'll use my uncanny capacity to forget. That was a movie then, a colorful projection in a dark hall, and the strangers I found myself between. Head, lap, hands, hair. Repeat it softly, without the mouth, without a voice, the body being extracted or implied. So you asked me to wear this G-string because you want to know if your fantasy of a flower blooming in the gardens outside Budapest's Palace of Art vibes with me. The way the thin ribbon passes between the curved flesh and firms against the very small of my back. I heard it was a good myth because of the hands, how the hands keep painting it. Sometimes when I'm stuck, I'll mute the volume and try to decipher your words from sight, remembering, after all, that anything that can be read can be misread, and anything that can be misread can be passed along. A murmur in the sequence of unbending code. I would ask if pain changes you, but it isn't really a question, is it? What is not clear to me is what my namesake says on the street corner when I approach them, wearing eyeglasses and a backpack in another book, each of us held at stoplight. Turn yellow, turn red. Genetic recollection of circling Warsaw at dusk to towel my tan skin under the Malecon. Naked and the wind blows softly, but it blows. A palm leaf below my bending joints for this joy of being homophonic with you. If receipts rifted from my jeans back pocket provide certain instructions. My favorite seat on the subway train is the one nearest the train's edge, from where I can see the drawhooks connecting each car in a curving line and the jostling of each compartment as I relate this experience into memory. Stuttering cadence of assemblage, which provides the tempo for this composition. Is this an array of cosmetics or a two-way window? Witness the passed-down notion of writing independently, silly fiction of the independent thought. I sat here all this time, hovering between street and sky, all the time relying upon the originality of others to tell me about myself and what I'm like. Still deciding whether to resist or absorb today's floating boredom on the F train. Today's floating anxiety and loneliness. Several undeserved sunsets on a grid and my adolescent jerk-off fantasies behind the vertical silence of blinds. Every sound associated with an object, space, person, and the things we did together. What is it to only miss things in memory? Dial-up modems and dial tone, the V train, voicemail and automatic rewinders, phone booths, pocket change, collect calls. Because I want to insist on non-relations or forge them, and so make these orphan subjects kin, I'll reference the water buffalo, who, half-eaten, dragged itself to safety when a pride of lions began to fight over its remains. Who among us hasn't been the water buffalo? Who among us hasn't been the lion? I want to take my vitamins. I want to make the fatal error message disappear. I want to be presentable. I want to listen to Grace Jones and Depeche Mode and shimmy my feet as my legs bob under the table. I want to eat well and sleep more. I want to start taking my dreams seriously. I want to resist the impulses of the poetic, excusing myself from my tendency to romanticize a silk shirt draped against the back of a desk chair, clothes without bodies, bodies without subjects, subjects without form, naturally flavored with other natural flavors. I like writing like I like a costume party, the choice to try things out, to surprise yourself in the company of people you know and nevertheless cannot recognize, or the reverse. The skin cracks under extreme pressure. Maybe it feels good for you too, this carnival of bodies that are really just words. Understanding that there is always a hole in the image and that water remembers a thing like breath, a thing like rock and sand. Let the silent spaces between song rush in. I prefer my hair unwashed. I prefer polka dots to a flannel pattern. I prefer the text to smuggle typos in publication, tokens of use, residues of the unreliable body, inexcusable, like time. When I got my new face, they never told me I'd inherit the memories that passed before it. But now is not then, if then ever was a now. My ghost image floating on your screen. Me spliced into smaller versions and reconditioned as code. To be yours now or your now. To be you now. Again and again and again. A temporal kink whose digital discharge powers the erotics of indeterminacy. I want us to keep nibbling for fear of losing our hunger. The way the flesh rests on the white coverlet or sheet, and the dark strip linking tuft to taint. I want to hold on to it, but I could also let it bob and drift. I could also lie down. I could also lay myself down to admit some tendons weren't made for names. True ruin. A sacrifice tempered by my stream, the hush refrain of unbroken flow. Then mime my exit theme. Say, the air traveling through the instrument cleans the whistle as the lyric hum. Whenever it is, I'll be done writhing. Even the crystalline orbs that rise only to die at the lip of the highball I cup in one hand as I am doing this with the other, ease their afterlife into an account that is not yet hardened. The throb at the top of the very top of the muscular tube inside the neck voices my desire. I will swallow what I have to because I have to, since all absence desires to be endlessly repeatable. So we selected that favorite scenario again from the options available to us under the assumption of infinity offered by the grid, its aspirations to display, its tendency to impose order. Under a false ceiling in the room reserved for banquet feasts, you smothered me with rose petals, as if you were Heliogabalus and I were one, just one among any other unsuspecting guests to die before the mixing of wine with hot, very hot water. On a different channel, Bush suggests Americans go shopping to prove the terrorists wrong. And now the laying of different silvers and their specific applications inside the mouth. The sky, a spectral ashy gray against the smell of burning glue. My blonde hair, not yet a dirty blonde in a pre-K photograph. The telltale hum of black holes merging in the early universe. Or maybe best to wipe the image from your screen. Wipe the image from your mind. The way books mature in being unpublished, and even more in being unwritten. Reduced to the embryonic seed permitted by latency, the absence of composition, printing, distribution, promotion, reception, an audience, etc. Words had begun to accumulate meaning. My one gift, to practice posterity before disappearing. Thank you so much. I'm going to end on a poem. It's actually the last poem from Windows 85. untitled. It's difficult to admit this because we're afraid of losing ourselves. And this is what softened me. He began to feel my voice again in his mouth. The air was still. Birds were on the branches. Sound of tires under negative acceleration. A car pulling toward the curb. Persons dropped or about to be. The drift of approach. Around the corner, another corner. The grating roar of ocean, and beyond ocean, the green screen sea. I felt my eyes being sensational and wet. Remember? It was 7:07. At some point, a minute passes. It almost always does. Shocking doorbell footage shows saber-wielding burglar tasered by police. We waited for our oat milk latte, the way we wait for death. What else is there to say? I thought I could be a person, that of being flesh, I could return us to the inside, where we could remain unspoken for. That thing could be given form without its being given a word, under the impression that the most dangerous gaze is the reflex to look back. In this mirror that catches everything against its slick surface, wall to wall, we retreat to an earlier pose. Pondering the resemblances between a copse and a thicket. What is mine isn't. What is yours if not me? The seed ripening already in the throat. I'm gonna lay here on the grass, you typed back, and blow bubbles and shit. To look up with shock is to acknowledge the grandeur of paradise. Come to the window, sweet is the air. Look at us, repeating hymns we learned in high school. That unforgiving or unforgettable moment when I gave my life away. Steered clear of currency, I had my work, they boded, cut out for me. 1,100 severed heads, each with symmetrical eyes, nose, and mouth, with respect to the ears. They wanted moments of autobiography, plus the failure of ever really knowing anyone. Was there a difference between sex and possession when the intention was to feel from your thumbs, taste from your tongue, see from your unblinking orifice? Consider the consequences of getting what you really want. And all this writing contaminated by ambition and the shame of holding a body that is not yours to own. The fear of coming clean, admitting that it's easier to play dead. My so-called life. The pleasure of pictures tending to atrophy any urge for action, though it's better, isn't it, that we can hold this vantage point indefinitely. A deepening afterglow across mute distances. She says, can we just laugh for a fucking minute? He says, I'm at the airport, hence developing a massive list of desires. Since we believe the simple fiction that we are already touching, and having already touched, what more was there to do but dissolve? But for the what if of any good crush, I said, didn't I, the most interesting detail in any photograph is the thing you don't see. He was described as having a rainbow-like sway of colors, eyes like ports, ass like shipwrecks. Sound stipples into illegible semitones, a stuttering long line of spray where Terminal C meets the moon-blanched land, crossroads of watching and waiting. Sample, 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 sail, and each wave splices unequally. Something in the air says the archive is passing hands again. If we consider the crime was the witnessing, the lack of restraint or the fact of one's capacity to offer everything but oneself, when better means the same, when sameness means unity, and the tacit agreement that nothing happens, nothing will ever happen. Begin and cease and then again begin, all scenarios reducible to a common theme, plus the error of equating description with intimacy. I held out because I wanted to make this last. I withdrew because I wanted to show myself, to see myself anew. And now, above my head, witness a cartoon garland of stars. And now I'm coming up again as if for breath. I wonder, though, how does one, your text said, get used to having arms? Why do cookies turn hard? People also ask, why do hearts turn hard? Why the muscle tenses to anticipate touch? Why the mind quickens for the clutch of vertical lines and their jagged distribution across the shore? He was looking for a place to store our memories. The air was still and the windows rolled low, so my free hand reached out to meet the dying sun. Turn yellow, turn red. It's all over for us, except for my dangling legs, the flexion of rib cage as I integrate respiration. Except for these trees, the sound of cars slowing to a halt, hauling rubber against the road littered with receipts, birds sitting on their branches. Except for the analgetic violence of any dream that likes to perch on high. We were trying to outlive forever, since what makes us human is our human misery. And this is what softened me, softened us, that nothing is mine, not even me. Not even the sudden weakness in the skin that means my image is fleeing again, forgetting to drag the body that bears it. A person dropped or about to be. I began to feel his voice again in my mouth. And the screen is calm tonight. The screen is calm tonight. The screen is calm tonight. The screen is calm. Thank you.
Chris Campanioni. Let's take a just 5-minute break, and then we'll be back with Ann Lauterbach. Welcome back to our second reader, Ann Lauterbach. I've been reading Ann Lauterbach's essays and poems throughout her storied career, but introducing her reading today, I want to talk about relevance. Lauterbach's recent book, Door, emphasizes a space that's ongoing, in that as her epigraph from Mina Loy says, consciousness has no climax. For Door, I think for her work as a whole, Lauterbach dismisses the drama of the moment. From another perspective, the constant drama of each moment that desperately seeks to point to one thing because of our current unease, our current fear, our current fever. Not that there aren't important things that demand our attention. Quote, care within, a paradigm of neglect is tricky if there is no thought of a transcendent table. But the shape of that concern is not the anxiety of daily need. Rather, a range of meanings pushes her prosody in that there are multiple doors in Door, as, quote, we are dispersed into airs composing its own sequence, its own litter of days. Then my expectation of cathexis as a reader is not fulfilled. Rather, Lauterbach disperses my expectation. Quote, there is nothing behind the door. There is only door, a condition, a prospect, a perception in which gap occurs or might occur. And this probabilistic presentiment reminds me of her conditional, quote, earth wounded, ready to quit. A line in which I read Door as an ecological poem, focuses on multiple connections in fractured space where there is, quote, no easy Egypt. Any step in her work, the next step, might be physical or conceptual, as each step is microscopically attuned to how I might see what I tend to overlook as I move my weight from my right foot to my left foot. To accomplish this feat, Lauterbach lets the words take her where they will, at the same time that she retains an unerring sense of where she wants to go. And that place is a kind of otherness that enacts resistance. She rejects teamwork, she rejects easy friendship, quote, please find another way of counting on me other than by asking for money. That hits home. But somewhere in the middle of her stanzas, the heart stumbles onto a clearing, as in a painting whose surface is a pattern rendered as brilliant debris echoed across the landscape. And here are the patterns in the risk of hurt earth turning against us, in the layers of sunset's bloods. We find Ann Lauterbach today ready to let us in on the language and diverse intentions of her door left ajar for us. Please open your door and give a warm welcome to Ann Lauterbach.
It's very upsetting to be not tall. I resent being not tall. Every podium ever built was for a tall person. I was very, very happy to hear your work. Thank you. And I thought, I'm very sad that I'm not going to be able to know you when you're old, because it'll be very interesting to see how you take that huge intelligence and effort and energy and how it evolves. It's hard to even think about how that might happen, but it will happen. So I'm at the other end of the journey of the poet, and I thank you. I have to say, I just may never start reading. This is my... And I'm going to get my water. You didn't have a sip of your water for like 40 minutes, and I'm already needing water. So I just wanted to acknowledge James Sherry, who I've known for a very long time, and who has been this extraordinarily generous and present supporter of the world of poets and poetry of a very particular ilk. I'm not in the ilk, so it's particularly sweet of him to ask me to join his ilk. I'm very moved and very happy to call myself his friend. So I'll read some poems from Door. There are 8 poems called Door in Door, and I'm not probably going to read any of them. But I'll start with this poem called Habitat. This is by way of saying farewell to TikTok. I think this is its last moment on Earth. And I feel sad as somebody who has never, ever seen TikTok, toe. But never mind, you'll see, I looked it up, and therefore it got in here. This is called Habitat. Is the sound okay? Do not partition or curtail the fearful crowd. They are already stranded. Your belts and sandals will not reach them in their wandering distress. I myself will be wearing a stole with tassels. Sometimes choices are words, sometimes they come as tactile objects to be touched. The contingent of insurgent migrants moving swiftly over the stark terrain, they have no time for these niceties or what is kept under our vestments dangerously excitable. Today, in the shower, I was recalling orgasm as a layered volume of flow, so intricately woven as to be the sensed motion of time, slowly opening. Now at last it is raining. These weathers are included as reminder that our inner and outer beings are breathing into the seams of the day, and that the temporal scansion is as uninhabitable as a rainbow. The clock, however, is full of accusations and praise meted out into the days. I cannot know the barefoot figures fleeing toward the harbor, their faces illumined, their limbs arcing into shadow wings. It cannot know how light dilates evening. The clock, however, is full of accusations and praise meted out into the days. It cannot know the barefoot figures fleeing toward the harbor, their faces illumined, their limbs arcing into shadow wings. It cannot know how light dilates evening. And dreams, what of them? They will bleed through, find a way to tell of our passage, relate grass and stream, 3 coyotes basking on the hill, swirl of cloud, the hawk's high whistle, no camera, no lamp, no held image to capture the unpredictable path. Enlightenments, vistas, storied performances, everyone up close and sweaty with desire, montage of the nameless boy with his entourage of lovers. They climbed to the top of the spire as I watched the boy and 2 girls wearing blue shorts that flared in the wind, and then they could not find a way down, their bodies entangled, their bodies entangled in metal casements. Meanwhile, branches had been collected and arranged, stapled to a wall, but no one had thought to find water, so they began to wither, their leaves browned and stiff. The woman from the gallery wept and tore her skirt into ribbons that the bowerbirds took. The bowerbirds weren't in the dream. They are a distraction. You can look them up on TikTok, where there are other pranks, jokes, dances, and tricks that resemble dreams. What happened? The secular spirit gropes for solace and refuge. The painter could see the scene. depicting the sainted monk and his habit among birds, depicting the ravished angels strewn across the blue wall's firmament in a storm of grief. These figments, stories without witness, rendered as material fact. And so we stare at their silence, its reservoir of the miraculous offered on trust. So one of the problems with this is that it is actually too high for me to be able to see well, so it's very peculiar. Sorry. Ingredients. Went through, turned, looked back. Is this paper a scene? Are they kissing? In profile perfect, nose to lip to chin, but not an image, not photography. I rest my case. My case is resting like dough. I went through hoping to greet you on the other side. Moon, hello. I might have called into the sky. Hello? It might have been a question. What is this word, hello? It holds some dark components, some poor ingredients. I speak at times of a poem's ingredients as if I were making a pie. What would Paul Hollywood make of my poem pie? He would say, I'm not getting it. The it being a flavor I said I had added but did not come through, the crust underproved. Prue is kinder. She complements verisimilitude, the sweet decorative touches essential to taste. What shall I make today? I'm going to the market to get some eggs, some milk. I will see what is fresh. Blueberries, rue. Coming along, coming along. Oh, it's already open. Who am I? I was thinking also that the world that you pull out of the world is so profoundly urban. And then I was thinking, I was once an urban person, and now I'm not. And how interesting it is to live in a kind of constant awareness of being in this elsewhere, which is not the urban. And then I thought that this whole digital monstrosity that we've created is a projection from the urban. And your pieces made me think that very strongly, that they're entangled with each other in some way. Although the urban, of course, is over. It's called As If. Credentials hover over an aftermath, spoken now, already phantom, as if a child ardent, surpassing, maybe adrift on the cold architecture of ruin, already under a familiar constellation of the unforgiven displayed as silence, rat-a-tat-a-tat, lyrics muddied by vernacular troubadour coiling. Not reading this poem today. I don't know what's happened to me. I think you're witnessing some kind of breakdown. Say what? Well, the whole thing is very disturbing. It's really very I mean, I don't like being funny this way. It's upsetting to be funny this way. Okay, I will try this one. Maybe a little bit less demanding. Although I changed it, I actually changed the tense of the last lines. I wonder why I did that. I did that. All right. This is called Ethos. I know I'm becoming a comic of some kind, right? Ethos. Someone must have predicted this, some Jeremiah not believing in the new renewals of the new, the ineluctable flower. Someone must have seen this coming, someone familiar with if-then relations, someone looking down, back hunched with bending, following the dark ground, following the track, who saw the tunnel and water sluicing through, the fires leaping, ravenous, melting copper pans, killing the dog. In high school, a teacher introduced the idea of an ethos. It was difficult to comprehend. What was an ethos? Our teacher, Mr. Cooper, spent some time defining ethos. We were reading the Odyssey, so I suppose he was talking about ancient Greece, its ethos. Are we at the end of an ethos? I am, but not we are. But if we includes me, then I am. A young man, Joe, is working for Verizon. He is almost 23, he tells me. He and I are waiting for the service phone to pick up so he can change my forgotten Verizon passcode. It is very hot outside. We are on hold. He doesn't appear eager to engage in conversation. He must think I am an old woman who forgets more than a passcode. He has dark hair and dark eyes and is very thin and not tall. Is attention a form of retention, of preservation? Is this why numbers as facts matter? Anyway, waiting as we were on a hot July day, we begin a conversation. He tells me he had been enlisted and had served in Kuwait and Iraq. I don't recall now why he told me, perhaps because I had asked about working for Verizon. There's a painting in the Alice Neal exhibition at the Met called Fuller Brush Man. I did not read the wall card's description because I find them mostly patronizing. In any case, I wondered how many of the crowded melee of viewers knew that what a Fuller Brush Man is, and recalled that a man came to the door with a suitcase full of brushes for sale. "Mom," we called, "the Fuller Brush Man is here." Simone Weil talks about attention. To what should we attend? Attention is a form of response, not just perception. If you attend, you respond. Otherwise, you are in an aesthetic morality, pleased with yourself for seeing. We saw and we said, but what did we do? This question sits like a huge stone on top of modernity's ethos. On relation. After a while, you run out of news, and so words decline. The better way would be not to worry about your news or even the news. Words don't care about your or the news. Words are indifferent to how you are feeling about your feelings. They do not care if you see something or say something. Words congregate among themselves and are safe from your gestures, your desire to have them meet you exactly where or as meaning is. If you would look around, you would see that words do not wish or care to be included in your pursuit of the right, the perfect, the one. They need not attach themselves to that, this, or this, that. What a cynical little poem. Which I don't really believe it. I'm going to read some new work, so I've sort of raced through Door, skipping all the good parts. But I'm going to read this poem, The Blue Door, which is dedicated to the wonderful poet and lyricist and publisher Kenward Elmsley, also a great, great friend of poets like James, not like James at all in person. He died a few years ago, and I miss him. And at his memorial, I almost read this poem, But then I was persuaded that it would be a little bit too much Anne and not enough Kenward, so I didn't. But Anne Waldman, who is here this evening, wanted me to read this poem. And since she's here this evening and Kenward's not, I'm dedicating The Blue Door to Anne. The obligatory cancels its strophe. Let me get a grip and begin in this other patch where the air is. Am I among the vanishing? How does it feel? As if turning, as if falling, as if coming unstuck from the body's inconvenience? Too many questions spoil the poem. The poem as poem cannot reply. This is why we need more voices, even as we know what happens when there are more voices, noise, arguments, rupture. Why not a single voice, one that represents everyone? Poem, are you listening? A crucible of dalliance supersedes Goldilocks and all other pending catastrophes angling toward power. As if on the last day you could recall power. If only the field could react, if only the field could retract into a new beginning, intact, complex, the geography of the many seeding the plural world with accord, good replicating good, evil singular kept to its barren agenda. Prayers and wishes could then speed our recovery from the uninhabitable scald of the venal market. Not to be hysterical or polemical, not to confuse personal anxiety with the future. I was once at the Stray Dog Cabaret, once in unlit neighborhoods where sexy initiatives were underway, awaiting Jim Jarmusch. Clubs, bars, sudden upswept. Clubs, bars, sudden upswept encounters with the privileged poor, dancing with the stars. Meanwhile, another beginning in another district. I am seeing the headlights of an oncoming vehicle. I am seeing filmic snow. Oh, and I am stepping into the new day like a doe among bucks, a girl in sequins. I am trying not to count lovers or shoes. The shoes gather, episodic in twos. There are no agents, no inscriptions, as the story flows down into a rescinded pile. I have come to fear the punctuated day. I have come to wish I had done things differently, never to have begun with such sad disclosures, absent the stanza, the difficult vocabulary, wandering barefoot along an avenue before these piles, these sticks, the distant lump of dark vestigial matter and skittering sounds from under the floor lasting until dawn, and so looking outward where skies assemble their beautiful reconnaissance, traveling as if beckoning, as if to include. There are countless children wandering, singles and plurals, one shoe, many children, or one child, many shoes. These discrepancies confuse the grammatical police. They do not know what to arrest. Please speak carefully, as this is a vote, and whether or not you have shoes, you need to say, to choose whether or not, what undergirds these words, what might be found, a frugal sandal or the dazzling technicolor magic of the good witch's rubies. Everyone is after ruby slippers. We might sort through the archive of sneakers, the branded stores. We might look at the feet of strangers shod in tar and mildew, mud and blood. The goo trembled underfoot like history. The southern sky has turned peachy. I would like to wear it out tomorrow as a slip, and so slipped through the hole in the sky into the azure assembly that peered swerve from universe to universe in my new attire, looking for a mate or moonstruck in the glitter of heaven. No guns allowed. If you listen carefully, you can hear the rhythm of insomniac wings pulsating between episodes of cloud. In this atmosphere, nothing is shut, and so motion is the rule, motion without time, this time, our habit of counting up and counting down, speaking in numbers as if they were thought. In the distance, I hear the sound of a creature being slain by another creature. The beings I love are creatures. Is writing a way of stalling for time? To delay the tasks in the next room, dishes and clothes, books and papers, the pile of shoes on the floor, the rugs, the drawer, chaotic with nails and hooks and small tools. Poem is too busy to answer. Words are like small magnets pulling other words toward them one by one, so the signals gather, and as they gather, they attest to an alignment that will become meaning. What was it you said about naming? It makes a way between unbeing and being, the definite flowing into the circulating infinite, the blue door opening the night sky. I'm going to read a few. How's the time? Are we all right? We're good?
Time is fine.
Time is fine? How are you? Okay, so I've been asked, no, I proposed a project and amazingly got a little grant to continue with the project. It was sort of a bad thing because that means I actually have to do it. I am the world's most amazingly adept procrastinator. In any case, I'm calling this project The Meanwhile, because I think we're all living in a meanwhile. And we really don't know how to think about narratives at all. And so the meanwhile is a kind of parenthesis. And I think, okay, so there aren't any sentences anymore, they're only parentheses. And that's kind of comforting because they sort of you can be inside of a parenthesis, right? And all this other stuff's going on, you just stay inside the parenthesis or the meanwhile. So I've made a whole flock of pretend sonnets. Pretend in the sense that they're only sonnets because they have 14 lines. Nothing about them. Otherwise, it's a sonnet. But the first of these was written because my wonderful friend, Paul Auster, when he was dying of cancer, mentioned that having cancer was like being in a war zone. And he didn't mean what you think he meant. He said that when he was in the hospital, or many hospitals, he found out all these things about his inner body that he never knew, all these names. And he said it's like being in a war zone where you hear about all these, you learn the names of all these cities and towns that you'd never heard of. I thought that was an extraordinary idea of the body as a kind of war zone that you don't know anything about until there's a war. So I wrote this first one called War Zone for him. And the thing that is, well, I'll read it and then I'll say something and then I'll read some more of them and then we can go away. War Zone for Paul Auster. Days emptied out along the hairline cracks where you spilled the glossy oil, where you stopped resemblance from looking, where your thoughts, if they were thoughts, ghost things of the mind, dream things of the night, fell down and down to the last rock under the pile, the final colorless span, making no sound, or only the sound that cannot be heard without mimic, so that it spread as if made of inky moss, as if made from a tincture of fallen petals, of thin bloods and thin wings of the tiniest insects, bodiless in flight, translucent as dusk, but even so changeless, like the grieving of a stranger in a photograph of war. Last line intentionally left blank. So the rip of the last line there, it became interesting to me. And so these other poems that I've written, I've taken a line that's from a stranger, another place, and put it and given it to the poem. And what was really interesting about this experiment was that sometimes those stray lines fit into the poem anyway, and I don't quite understand exactly how that happened or even why, but you'll see. So I'll read a few of these. This one's called Slippers. Seems to be a theme from this. They weren't real rubies. They weren't real bullets either. They had believed on the set, and the wine wasn't real wine. It was water dyed to look like wine. The cat is real, but it is difficult to fake a cat. The day isn't real anymore. It is night now, and night cannot fake day. So much we see is not real, but imagine thinking the rubies were and finding a hammer to break the glass and steal the slippers. He had not seen the film with the girl in real slippers with glass rubies. The way the cat turns, his fur picks up light. Military leaders believed it was a mistake. Swing. A watchful burden snags the garden, trembling amid the hot catastrophe. Its stamina weakens. Habit we had thought would serve to keep us reasonably intact, but we were mistaken. Poor translation, the word is wrong. The skips increase. Soon they will be all that is, an abstaining hall where no one passes. Overhead light dim, the floor black. There were steps of barefoot girls and a man striding, sad-eyed, his elongated stature mute. Stature, nature, vision entwines braids of belief, its ribbons under an old book which once held a gift, an idea. This poem inspired by reading about Robert Louis Stevenson. So, Emily Dickinson said, hope is a thing with feathers, right? Hope. Tuesday, featherless extremity. Fold the deck, it's a cartoon mirage, and the high-end stakes are moot. In the game of trial and error, error won, and so dragging behind on the path the thing we thought is no longer known to the mind's image. Seems the hand is down. Seems the day foreclosed against a law whose enemy surrendered to the cause and whose basket is full of rusted arms. The wind is up, we're blowing into flames. The wings are made of ash, old ash. This connection is not private. Flood. Why not collect greens in the afternoon? The blues are subdued and away in the cool blue of ardent becoming, dirge of corpse bodies iced. Greens among minds in the next crowd, gathering to cower under the tent, eyes averted. The slain, the dirt, the bitter, jealous girls posing for the rest, their lips parted as if with devotions of the newly blessed. Mary could see the bright white V of the sunlit tree, and Bob could see a single cloud's long path. Look, look, he cried, but no one could hear in the rushing, oncoming waters. Simple, tiny nightstands are for free. A few more, you could. Childhood, maybe not Maybe the voices had it. Childhood. Ugly old milk, what are you? Greek forsythia bloomed under sheets, no mercy, no mouth, graduated music on the great sex stage. Cradle steeped under a blanket and dark as if captured by blue, as if mobile, old sour. And then how this other youth made a yellow feast of the day, as if kitchens were eternal, as if the walls were really a nest and the floors really the secret vengeance of a luminous god. There was an interview, some whispers, the gender question ripped open, the skin bloodied under pale silk. This is in contrast to the training phase. Shoes. Asleep in Snow sounds like the name of something, maybe a novel or film set in Scandinavia. There's a word I rarely say, or I have run out of possibilities, and you have probably guessed that this phrase, asleep in snow, although beautiful, is a description of some persons in January who have no other place to sleep but in snow. Oh, why must I know this? Why can't I just turn my sleepy head away and go quietly to bed and get under my organic cotton quilt coverlet, which is like a kind of warm snow? There is something called inelastic demand. More than one dashed back to their sleeping spots. There's one left. There's one. There's two more. You're okay.
We're okay.
Object. Neglect stymies the incident. We're saying trivial gold. Had excused the misfit without exile, meandering, then back into the woods. There, pain among weeds and the leaves shorn into capillaries that felled. We're saying how the algorithm of gold, or a golden algorithm, was poison. Also, there on the floor of that world, how long it takes to get to the final stage. The pencil, for example, thrown into the fire, day in need of washed air, fear of escalation after rocket from Lebanon hits soccer field. Freedom. So, cavernous gold, your trail has ended. The bed is made, sheets all tucked, and down among the rocks where dreams are sealed and the quarry mute, figures drag along the cavern, whispering, weeping, all that. They are not in a mood to die. Asking, were you? Were you? Recalling when someone had inquired, where are you? She stood at the top of the hill and looked out over the city and thought there might be winds or wings. The mechanism works, but it's missing a hand. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That concludes tonight's installment of the Segue reading series. Let's hear it once again for Anne and Chris. Wonderful, amazing work. Brilliant. We hope to see you next week for the season finale, which is going to feature Jermaine So, who's here, and Ted Reese, who's going to visit from Philadelphia. Just very quickly, I also want to let you know that Inner Poets Theater, which is a part of the Segue Foundation, is having a show on February 3rd at Torn Page in Chelsea, and it's a play that I wrote about Hart Crane. So it's going to be a one-night-only thing. If you want to check out tickets for that, they're on sale now, segwayfoundation.com, innerpoetstheater.com, or on social media. Thanks for coming by, and hope to see you next week.